If the Biden administration wants their Ukraine funding, they have to first secure the U.S. border.
4 suicides up until November, and then 4 within a matter of 2 days. Like, it doesn't seem remotely logical.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic. And we are unapologetically outspoken.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. So there is a lot going on in Congress. And once again, we are a little over a week away from another government shutdown, like always. And we're going to get into that today and then everything else going on because it's just very crazy right now in the world. So there was a closed door meeting in the House, and Republicans discussed stopgap measures, including this new laddered approach, which would fund parts of the government until early December, and then the rest would be approved in like mid-January. And I watched a podcast or listened to a podcast earlier today where they explain this a little bit better, but there's 12 appropriation bills that need to be passed. Only like 3 are sitting at the Senate right now. Like they're so behind, like always. And then just like every single time, they have that big omnibus bill that ends up getting passed because they couldn't get everything together in time. So this would basically be like a tiered approach where you pass what you have right now, and then the rest of the chunk of bills would be passed in January, which I think is smart because obviously the way they're doing things isn't working right now. So that's what they're discussing. House Speaker Mike Johnson gave an interview on Fox News where he discussed the plan to combine appropriation bills for Ukraine funding with border funding for the United States. That way, if the Biden administration wants their Ukraine funding, they have to first secure the U.S. border. And I think that is absolutely reasonable to ask. And then with regards to Israel, the Republicans are agreeing with the $14.5 billion in aid. But what they're saying is they're not going to just borrow that money like they've been doing. Mike Johnson stated that the money is going to come from the money that the IRS was supposed to get to hire the additional 87,000 IRS agents that were basically going to go after American citizens. Again, like I think this is absolutely reasonable. It's responsible. Instead of just borrowing the money, they're finding the money and just reallocating. But of course, the Democrats aren't taking this very seriously.
Yeah, because they don't take anything seriously. But I have to say, like, I love this. And I agree, it's totally reasonable. Like, we don't need more fucking IRS agents that are, as we all know, specifically hired to fuck the hardworking taxpayers when we allow millions and millions and millions of people to flood our borders who don't pay any taxes. And on top of that, we have no say as to where our tax money even goes. And this administration has spent our hard-earned money on absolute nonsense that we don't even benefit from. So I love this. And I love that he's putting America's border first before Ukraine, even though like our border is so fucked by now that the damage has been done. But at least he's using a common sense approach to trying to balance issues at home with providing aid to our foreign allies. So I can get on board with that.
And I think it's a great approach. And it's really putting the Democrats in a position where if they want their funding, if they're going to say no to this, then they're saying no to the Ukraine funding. So it's like he's trying to compromise here. And now it's up to them whether they want to reject it or not. But meanwhile, Senate Republicans put together a proposal that would require Homeland Security to resume construction of the border wall, mandate DNA collection, and push for border patrol retention by increasing their overtime and improving recruiting. And the bill would also see significant restrictions in the federal government's ability to release migrants into the interior. And it would also tighten asylum limits, which are all things that are just common sense that we should be doing already. Senator Lindsey Graham gave a statement saying, quote, "We must make policy changes to reduce the flow of immigration. The world is on fire and threats to our homeland are at an all-time high." Tara, your favorite person, KJP, you want to know what she said about this? She said this proposal is a non-starter. How the fuck is it a non-starter? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, but of course she did, because She's basically the spokesperson for Team Destroy America. And this is a little off topic, but I want to play a clip from a couple days ago because she did her usual saying nothing except to say that she is not going to say anything. So I want to play this clip where a reporter from, I think it was NBC News, was asking her about her response to like all the anti-Semitic protests. So just listen to what she says.
A lot of videos of individuals who've been tearing down signs, many of these taking place in New York City, of Israelis presently being held hostage in Gaza. There have been some tense confrontations that have taken place there. Is the White House's view that these actions should be condemned, the pulling down of them, or that that's a form of peaceful protest?
Look, I've sort of kind of seen the reporting here and there. I think it was from last week,
There's
right?
like 30 million videos that have gone around.
No, I know, I hear you. I hear you. I'm just not going to, we're not going to, I'm not going.
Is that peaceful protest to pull that down, or should you not be?
I'm just not going to go into specifics on that particular thing. What I can say, there are real violent protests and threats that are happening right now. And senior administration officials are aware of these reports, which are deeply concerning. And that is something that we're focused on.
Deeply concerning, but I am not going to say anything. And I really haven't seen anything that's going on, even though I'm the fucking press secretary.
Yeah. Where else can you consistently like not do your job, not answer questions and still have a job? They might as well just get like an AI chat bot to repeat the same thing. I'm not going to comment on this. I'm just not going to go into it because that's all she ever says.
Yeah. And so I just had to play that because it's the same fucking answer every time. But getting back to what you were saying about the Border Patrol and like increasing overtime and improving recruiting, honestly, I don't know why anyone would even want to work for the Border Patrol at this point. Like, isn't it funny? Because law enforcement jobs used to be incredibly competitive, and there were so many restrictions, and most people got passed down because they couldn't, or passed up because they couldn't pass like the stringent background investigations. So they would get turned down for the job. And then you look at the past few years under the Biden administration, where it's gotten to this point where law enforcement agencies can't recruit or even retain bare minimum staffing levels. And they have to try and entice people with like hefty sign-on bonuses and promises of cash overtime. And they're basically begging people to apply. And I guarantee that in that process, the standards have been severely dropped for hiring. And now we have several police departments throughout the country who are hiring illegal non-citizens because there's such a hiring crisis. So I'm curious to see if this proposal actually does anything for the Border Patrol retention and recruitment. And maybe they'll just start hiring illegal migrants to police illegal migrants.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to work out great. Well, and that's the thing, like the Biden administration, they want to use that funding to like basically process more people and give more people asylum, where the Republicans are saying, no, like close the border. So it's two completely different ends of the spectrum. And I just can't believe at this point in time, they're still admitting they want an open border, the Democrats. So the other thing going on in the House is Rep. Rashida Tlaib was censured due to her being outspoken and criticizing Israel and continuously promoting false narratives, including making false accusations that Israel was the cause for the rocket that hit the hospital in Gaza, despite numerous sources that consistently proved otherwise. And all but 4 Republicans voted to censure her. I would love to know who those 4 Republicans were. And 22 Democrats actually ended up joining in. And we talked about this on Wednesday, but Tara, like I just have a feeling, I feel like this Israel conflict could be the thing that might possibly bring the Democrats and Republicans somewhat together, like at least in a place where they can find some common ground.
Well, it's interesting because like you've even got Democrats saying that Tlaib went like too far with her anti-Semitic rhetoric. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are so many Jewish people who hold positions of power in the United States, and they're Democrats for the most part. Like, look at what's happened recently with Senator Bernie Sanders. Like, he's a hardcore socialist, progressive libtard, but he's also Jewish. And so he's been denouncing the anti-Semitism. He's not getting on board with the idea of calling for a ceasefire, like many members of Congress are. And he's outwardly stated he doesn't believe a ceasefire would be possible with an organization like Hamas. And so obviously you've got the rest of the, pro-Palestinian libtards who are angry because he's not going along with that narrative. And so it is causing a divide in the Democratic Party.
Yeah. And then, on Wednesday, we discussed the absurdity of Kamala Harris saying that Islamophobia is the primary concern in the US, while it's clearly anti-Semitism. And
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like right after we recorded that, we heard the news that a Jewish man by the name of Paul Kessler, who was a 69-year-old, died in an apparent homicide during a pro-Palestinian protest in California. And I guess there was an altercation with one of the protesters. And according to a Newsweek article, Kessler was waving an Israeli flag when he was confronted by this group of protesters. And he ended up getting beaten over the head with a megaphone and died of blunt force trauma. And so the death has been ruled a homicide, and the medical examiner's office said, quote, "The Ventura County Sheriff's Office is investigating the incident and has not ruled out the possibility of a hate crime," end quote. And then there was another Jewish hate crime that took place in Indiana when a woman named Ruba Almageth, I have no idea if I'm saying her name right, 34 years old, drove her Chevy Impala into the Israelite School of Universal and Practical Knowledge in Indianapolis, according to an AOL article. And she told police that she was watching TV news coverage of the Israel-Hamas war and decided to plan an attack by crashing into this building that she was referring to as a Jewish school. And she told officers she was, quote, watching the news and couldn't breathe anymore. She referenced her people back in Palestine as well. And so the police contacted the FBI, which are now investigating the hate crime. And her vehicle had rear end damage. She admitted to crashing it on purpose into the building. And there was one adult, a 7-month-old baby, and 3 children, all under the age of 3, that were inside the building when the crash happened. But thankfully, they're all okay. Nobody was injured. But it's like, I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm just in utter disbelief that so many people have such a deep hatred of Jews. Like, I had no idea this was still such a big thing until the attack on Israel. And I guess I was naive enough to believe that most of that went away with, World War II when Germany lost and Hitler died. And I mean, I completely understand people having compassion for the innocent civilians, the Palestinians that did nothing wrong, that are being, hurt now. But this goes way beyond that. Like, this is pure hatred of people based on their culture and religion. And I never thought that we would see it, especially so openly in the United States.
Yeah, there's a difference between having compassion for innocent victims and being in support of organizations that want to destroy an entire fucking race and culture. And when I read about that article about the woman driving her car into the school, she was like totally upfront about why she did it. And she told the cops she was bothered by what she thought was a Jewish symbol on the side of the building. And it's like you said, pure hatred is exactly what it is. And I don't care if I sound like a broken record at this point, because I will continue to speak out and stand against hatred of Jews, just as I stand against hatred of any other race, culture, or religion. Like, I believe in tolerance to an extent, but I'm not going to stand by to quietly tolerate hatred and the destruction of people and the destruction of America.
Yeah, I agree. And that's exactly what this is. I mean, never did I think people would be supporting terrorism. It's insane.
Yeah.
But speaking of like insane, weird stories, there was one from your hometown where law enforcement officials found 4 Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department employees dead on Monday and Tuesday in what officials described as unrelated suicides. So there were multiple reports on this. They said that the deaths include 1 retired LASD member and 3 current members all in a 24-hour period. And the first thing that came to mind for me is like, there's no way that 4 people, all from the same sheriff's department, all committed suicide within a 24-hour period, and it's not related. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. My mom sent me this story last night, and when I read it, I was like, yeah, there's no fucking way that these are unrelated suicides. Because not only do they all work for the same sheriff's department, but 3 out of 4 of them all lived in the Santa Clarita Valley. And I'm very familiar with that area because I lived there myself for about 5 years. And it's an area where a lot of cops and firefighters live because it's like this safe suburban area for families, but it's still within a relatively decent commute to Los Angeles. So a lot of guys I used to work with live out there. And the last thing I saw, the media had released 2 of the names of the victims. And here's what I find weird. Like one was an active duty commander, which is a very high rank in law enforcement. One was a retired sergeant, which is also like a moderately high supervisory rank. And the news reports they both died of gunshot wounds. And then the names of the other 2, from what I've seen so far, haven't been released, but one's reportedly a female, and both of those 2 worked at correctional facilities in Castaic, which again, in the Santa Clarita Valley. And I think one of them lived there and the other one lives somewhere else. And then 3 of them are also over 55. So you have a commander, a sergeant, and 2 correctional officers. And like, so far this year, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department has had 8 reported suicides. And that includes these 4. So 4 suicides up until November, and then 4 within a matter of 2 days. Like, it doesn't seem remotely logical that not only would 4 law enforcement officers commit suicide within a 2-day period, but they would all be from the same department and living in the same area. Like, there's something very off about that. And I think there's some kind of cover up or something going on. I know nothing. I haven't talked to any of my friends that know anything. But if these deaths are truly unrelated, then this is seriously one of the strangest coincidences that I've heard in a while.
Yeah, I immediately thought, like, what did they see or what do they know? Like, it made me think about, remember, this is a totally unrelated case, but remember when there was the whole debacle over Anthony Weiner's laptop
Yes.
and the police that found it and that went through the laptop were so horrified. They physically vomited because of what was on there. They're all dead now, every single one of them that saw what was on that laptop. So it just made me think of that. Like, was there a situation where they saw something, like, or knew about something, and I don't know. I just think it's too strange to be just a coincidence. There's got to be something going on there. But in the coming weeks, I'm sure things are going to get really interesting, and we'll probably do an episode on this entirety because I'm very curious to see how this goes. But House Republicans announced that on Wednesday, they issued subpoenas to Hunter and James Biden, as well as a Biden family associate, Rob Walker. So this is all an escalation of the Republicans' impeachment inquiry into the president. And they're saying that they have like clear-cut evidence. So I cannot wait to see what Hunter and James say when they have to speak the truth or penalty of perjury. We'll see.
I'm really not holding my breath for any accountability because once again, this is the Biden crime family, but I will try to be positive and we'll see.
I know,
what
I
happens.
always get so excited and it's like, I'm so naive, but I'm just like hoping that maybe this will be the time I'm wrong.
Yeah, you get excited and I'm like, yeah, this is going nowhere, but we'll see. Okay, I have to bring up this article I found, okay? It's pretty like disturbing and disgusting, but it really made me laugh. So first, Stephanie, I have to ask you, have you been to Disney lately?
Yes. Why?
Okay.
I'm going to be afraid to hear this. I can guarantee it. Oh God.
When
Okay.
you were there, did you see people shitting on the ground while waiting in line to get on a ride?
No, I can definitely say I did not see that. If I did, we would be talking about it on this podcast.
Because that's apparently what's been happening lately at Disney World. So I read an article in the Daily Caller that I guess also came out in a New York paper, I believe. And it was talking about how Disney World guests are reporting that visitors to the park are pooping on the ground while waiting in line to get on rides. And one of the guests posted on Reddit, quote, "I'm in the queue," which means the line, "for Rise of the Resistance at Disney World. And someone just let their kid take a dump on the floor and then they just walked out and left it. What the fuck?" End quote. Another person responded to that post and stated, quote, "For the skeptics, this actually happened. Fun fact, this was one of 3 shit-related incidents at Rise today. Less fun fact, I was here for all 3 of them," end quote.
Okay, I just have to say, I 100% believe this. And the reason I believe it is because that ride, you will see people like lined up all the way through the park to get on that ride. So like I could see these
that ride?
crazy ass people. It's some Star Wars ride. And I mean, it's cool, but like people will wait for hours to get on it. So I could see people like being dumb enough to just like, why not just ask someone to hold your place and go take your kid to the bathroom? Fuck.
Well, there's apparently a Disney employee who reportedly claimed that these incidents are commonplace and that the staff has basically just become desensitized to them. And the employee stated, quote, "Bodily fluids no longer bother me after working at Disney. Let's just say that the attraction I work at has what the cast ended up dubbing, quote, the poop hall." End quote, because of the amount of times guests have gone in there and pooped. We even put up a camera and it didn't stop it, end quote.
Oh my God. Okay. Like just another reason why, like, why the fuck am I still taking my kids to Disney? Like I know like I can't stop. It's like our little family tradition thing. But yeah, it's not a good, there's too many bad things going on there. And I don't want to be stepping in poop. I mean, come on.
It's just crazy to me because when I was a kid, like we went to Disneyland all the time and there was like a dress code and you couldn't get away with shit. And I even went there with one of my boyfriends in high school who had a mohawk and they wouldn't let us into the park. We had to go back into the parking lot and he had to comb out his hair and take the mohawk down because that was unacceptable at Disney.
Well, that's the thing. Like they're very much like that. And here in Orlando, where if someone like drops something on the ground, they're right there like scooping it up. And God forbid you're like not parking your stroller in the right place. Someone just comes out of nowhere and will like move it. So they're very on top of things. So that really kind of surprises me. But at the same time, like I said, these Star Wars fans and that ride, it's just like not normal. But I have one for you that's kind of along these lines. So when I graduated college, I went to Italy with a friend. And the last day we were there, we went to the Vatican. And of course, there was a huge line to get in. So we're standing there and we're waiting in line. And there was a family in front of us. I think they spoke Chinese. I couldn't really tell exactly, but they didn't speak any English, but I could instantly understand what they were saying because the kid starts like moving around, you know, and you could tell he like had to go to the bathroom and the dad is just like pointing and the kid just like whips it out and starts peeing on the Vatican wall. He pisses and right in front of me. And I was just like, oh my God, I've seen it all. I mean,
See, that doesn't surprise me because when I went to China a few years ago, that's what little kids do when they have to go to the bathroom. They even have little holes in their pants. I took pictures of it because I was like just so in awe of like, wow, they do this. Like they literally just squat and shit on the street or they pee on the street. And it's commonplace. At least it was when I was there. And so that your story does not surprise me if they were, you know, from China.
that must be like a cultural thing because I had a friend who had a daycare in her house and she had a little like an infant that was Chinese and the grandmother would like come with her to show her how they do things. An infant, okay? They would not put diapers on it. They were like, we just kind of like when he starts going, we just hold him over the toilet. And she's like, what the hell? Like, I'm not doing this. This is absolutely insane. But I mean, I guess they get potty trained quickly that way. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
But
that was an interesting story to end on. I mean, it's much better than like the apocalypse or whatever. So
at least it's humorous.
I'm
But
gonna be
watch,
looking for it now. Like when I go
yeah.
past that line, I'm gonna be like looking. And if I see anything crazy, I'll let you know.
Yeah, you'll have to watch your step at Disney from now on.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a great Friday and enjoy the weekend. We're not going to leave you with a doom and gloom episode this time, but we'll be back on Monday and I can't guarantee anything then. So thank you guys for tuning in and we'll see you back here in a few days. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.